Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Lekon Onobanjo and here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin with the war in the Middle East, where the top United Nations court on Friday said Israel should do everything it could to prevent any act of genocide in the Gaza Strip. In a highly anticipated ruling, the International Court of Justice said Israel must do everything to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of the Genocide Convention. Gazans had earlier expressed lack of conviction in the ruling, as they say Israel would not abide by the decision. Despite the International Court of Justice's ruling, which orders Israel to halt its military campaign launched in retaliation for Hamas's unprecedented attacks on October 7, it has little power to enforce its rulings.
Israel shall take all measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. 16 votes to 1, the State of Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to ensure the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
In the meantime, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has slammed the South African genocide case as outrageous after UN Court Gaza ruling. South Africa had brought the case against Israel, accusing it of breaching the 1948 UN Genocide Convention set up in the ashes of World War II and the Holocaust. President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Council of South Africa's governing party erupted in cheers after the ruling, which the foreign ministry hailed as a decisive victory. But Netanyahu had already suggested he does not feel bound by the court, saying no one will stop Israel.
Israel's commitment to international law is unwavering. Equally unwavering is our sacred commitment to continue to defend our country and defend our people. Like every country, Israel has an inherent right to defend itself. The vile attempt to deny Israel this fundamental right is blatant discrimination against the Jewish state, and it was justly rejected. The charge of genocide leveled against Israel is not only false, it's outrageous, and decent people everywhere should reject it.
In another response, Palestinians in West Bank's Ramallah expressed their disappointment by the International Court of Justice ruling on Israel. They said they are not happy with the ruling. The court urged Israel to refrain from any possible genocidal acts as it presses its military operation in the Gaza Strip, but stopped short of ordering a ceasefire.
غير مقبول أن يقف العالم إلى اليوم بعد 100 فوق 111 أو 112 يوم لا يزال متفرجا ولم يقتلع قرارا فوريا بوقف إطلاق النار وإدخال الأغذية وإدخال الأدوية وإجلاء الجرحى.
القرار هو تصريح لدولة الاحتلال باستمرار حربها ضد غزة، ولكن الحرب الناعمة. هذا هو قرار محكمة العدل الدولية. كان مطلوبا من محكمة العدل الدولية أن تصدر قرارا بوقف إطلاق النار فورا.
كنا كتير متفائلين، احنا هلا مش مبسوطين، حاسين انه كانت المحكمة بتقدر تقرر بشكل واضح انه يكون في وقف لإطلاق النار ودخول لمساعدات إنسانية.
Joining me on the news to discuss this is Bolu Michael B. is a foreign policy analyst. It's nice to know that you're there.
Yeah, good day.
Now, the UN's top court ruled that Israel must take all measures to prevent genocidal acts in Gaza, but stopped short of ordering an immediate halt to operations. Now, with South Africa failing to force a ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza conflict, isn't that court ruling vague and one that smacks of defeatism?
Well, if we say a person answers a question diplomatically, it basically means that they are kind of, trying to not to take sides and stay in the middle and not offending any party, so to speak. So I think it's just international diplomacy coming into play, being that anything other than that ruling would be, taking side, taking an extreme stance. And that is not what international diplomacy is about. It reflects the complex nature of international diplomacy and the challenges faced within the region. But what makes that ruling, that position significant is that it kind of exposes the limitations of legal frameworks or mechanisms in seeking a quick conflict resolution.
Well, let's look at the response of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. He said that Israel will continue to defend itself and its citizens while adhering to international law. Now, that response too sounds somehow unconvincing. What do you make of it?
Well, that's the Prime Minister being a diplomat himself, and it's quite surprising because Israel tend to have stepped their boundaries in a lot of ways, in terms of human rights violations and terrible bombing of the Gazans, so it's quite surprising, and that Benjamin Netanyahu would say that they will keep defending Israel and at the same time saying within legal framework. The laws, international law, supports peace, supports mutual understanding, and I don't think there's a law that says international law that permits the outright wiping out or killing of people or genocide in any way. So it kind of contradicts himself, and it's we just have to keep observing and look out for Israel's next step.
Let's now look at the standpoint of the militant group. Hamas welcomed the ICJ ruling, saying that Israel must be compelled to implement all court rulings. To them, is this a major win to stop Israel's revengeful crusade against Hamas? Because some are concerned that Palestinians feel that Israeli forces might not halt hostilities. So where's the joy?
Yeah, I mean, they have, people have, legitimate reasons to fear that Israel would not abide by the ruling because, looking at precedents, they've kind of, violated a couple of times, and so there's no assurance that they would adhere to the ruling. For Hamas, it's a victory to them, so to speak. However, you can only force a horse to the river, you can't force to drink. So the willingness, how effective or whether the court really will be adhered to depends on Israel's willingness. You can't force them to comply with the court decision, and that means that everything is open and it's uncertain what the next step of Israel will be. We just hope that it's subject to continuous negotiation. So let's see what happens.
Let's now look at the issue of forced compliance. U.S. media reported that the head of the CIA is due to meet Israeli, Qatari, and Egyptian officials in the coming days to discuss a new potential ceasefire in Gaza. Can U.S. prevail over Israel in this matter after initial show of obstinacy?
Oh, I don't think the U.S. would actually have that conversation with Israel because they tend to be the one financing Israel to continue the war. If they wanted to have that conversation or prevail on Israel in any way, they would have a long time ago. They would stop supporting, they stop providing funds and weaponry to Israel. So the U.S. and Israel are strong allies, and they're committed to each other's cause. So U.S., for instance, is on the UN Security Council, and they have the veto power. A couple of weeks or months ago, it was the U.S. that blocked, that vetoed the resolution to halt ceasefire. So they had every opportunity to stop or prevail over Israel if they really wanted to all along. So if they've not done that up till now, I don't see Israel and U.S. having that conversation to halt hostilities anytime soon.
So that would now bring me to ask, are there any other parameters that should be considered when it comes to ensuring compliance on the part of Israel? As we know it, Hamas has said that it is not going to be a party to a two-party state. Israel has said that it is going to continue to ensure the protection of its people. Is there any way that we can stop this onslaught and probably broker peace among the both countries?
Well, hopefully, let's just be hopeful that Israel would comply with the ruling. However, it's quite difficult to enforce, the Israelis sometimes. However, there are some diplomatic or political measures that could be taken, such as that's where the United Nations Security Council comes in. They might be able to impose sanctions if they don't comply, or other diplomatic mechanisms. However, I don't see them happening because the United States literally owns this UN Security Council. I mean, they have the veto power and all that. So there's some checks and balances. UN Security Council, for instance, imposing sanctions. These are ways to ensure that the countries apply, align with the court rulings. But in this situation, considering the relationship between Israel and the USA, I don't see that happening.
Bolu Michael Biyi, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Away from the Middle East war, Russian President Vladimir Putin has given the go-ahead for the construction of the new Leningrad nuclear icebreaker, crucial to Moscow's Arctic ambitions. This comes as Russia seeks to make northern waters an essential trade route to Asia. During a speech while standing in a St. Petersburg shipyard, Putin said the nuclear icebreaker will operate on the northern sea route and participate in the most important Arctic exploration and research programs.
После завершения строительства ему предстоит работать на трассах Северного морского пути, участвовать в важнейших программах освоения и изучения Арктики, обеспечивать доставку грузов. У России сегодня уникальный, я хочу это подчеркнуть, уникальный, самый большой ледокольный флот в мире. И это наше огромное конкурентное преимущество. Колоссальные возможности для развития логистики, промышленности, создания новых рабочих мест, для комплексного обустройства арктических городов и поселков.
You're watching Beyond the Continent. We'll be back with more stories when we return from this break. Nice to know you're still there. Now, British head of state King Charles III will attend hospital next week for a corrective procedure to treat an enlarged prostate. The 75-year-old monarch's public engagements will be postponed for a short period of recuperation. According to Britain's National Health Service, benign prostate enlargement is common in men aged over 50 and is not related to cancer, while it is not usually a serious threat to health. Symptoms include a frequent need to pass water and difficulty in fully emptying the bladder. The cause is unknown, but it is believed to be linked to hormonal changes as a man gets older. Also, the 42-year-old wife of William, Prince of Wales, heir to the British throne, was admitted to a private clinic in central London on Tuesday, said Kensington Palace. Still in Europe, France's top farmers' union on Friday announced plans to blockade major roads around Paris, upping the pressure on the government to respond to their demands on pay, tax and regulations. Facing its first major crisis, Prime Minister Gabriel Attal was expected to offer concessions on Friday as ministers scramble to keep discontent from spreading months ahead of European Parliament elections. The encirclement of the capital follows days of disruption on motorways as well as tractor convoys through major cities and protests in front of government buildings. FNSEA Union Chair Arnaud Rousseau at the blockade point warned that they will be galvanized to continue their mobilization if the government does not provide the answers expected by farmers.
Tous les regards sont tournés vers l'agriculture depuis quelques jours, mais que depuis des mois, on rappelle qu'on a ces problèmes en retournant notamment les panneaux avec le ras-le-bol qu'on avait signifié, le fameux « on marche sur la tête ». Voilà, donc personne n'est surpris, tous ceux qui suivent ces sujets savent. La mobilisation agricole est sans précédent, avec un niveau de détermination que pour ma part je n'ai jamais vu. Voilà, donc ça oblige tous les responsables à être au niveau. On a encore une fois fait notre travail, tout le monde est sur la brèche. Tout le monde est tendu, tout le monde est fatigué, tout le monde n'attend qu'une chose, c'est de repartir dans son exploitation. Mais pour ça, il y a un préalable, c'est la réponse. Et si jamais il n'y avait pas ces réponses, évidemment, tout le monde serait galvanisé pour continuer. En tous les cas, c'est les...
Meanwhile, French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal on Friday offered a key concession to protesting farmers on diesel tax as part of measures the government hopes will end growing nationwide demonstrations. Attal said during a visit to a farm in southwestern France that it would put an end to the rising cost of diesel for farm machinery use as a consequence of the phasing out of tax breaks on the fuel.
Je crois, a envie de pouvoir avancer aujourd'hui et continuer à se parler, savoir mettre l'agriculture au-dessus de tout le reste. Voilà ce que notre présence veut dire aujourd'hui avec mes deux ministres, Marc Fesneau et Christophe Béchu. Avec les solutions que je vais vous présenter, non seulement le gouvernement vous a entendu, mais qu'en plus, il vous a compris. Il y a une urgence, et je vais vous dire, aujourd'hui, c'est un jour de sursaut.
In the meantime, several hundreds of people marched through the center of Rennes in northwest France to protest the enactment of an immigration law. Protesters smashed several shop windows, burned rubbish bins, while police targeted by mortar fire used tear gas. The Constitutional Council widely censored the immigration law on Thursday. The decision, hotly contested on the right, but satisfactory for the government, which is preparing to promulgate the text in the coming hours to apply the first measures from this weekend. Insufficient for far-right leader Marine Le Pen confirms that only a reform of the constitution will make it possible to respond to migration issues. The president of the National Rally, Jordan Bardella, denounced a coup by the judges with the support of the President of the Republic, who himself had contacted the sages. Tens of thousands of Australians took to the streets on Friday, protesting the contentious national holiday that also marks the arrival of European colonists more than 200 years ago. In Sydney, Melbourne, and several other cities, thousands of Invasion Day protesters demanded the date of the annual Australia Day celebrations be changed. The public holiday is held on January 26 every year. For most Australians, it is synonymous with a day of work with a day off work and the end of the summer holidays. Indigenous activists say Europeans' arrival heralded the start of a centuries-long campaign of cultural genocide. Just under 4% of Australia's 26 million people are Indigenous. In North America, Alabama has executed convicted murderer Kenneth Eugene Smith with nitrogen gas. This is the first time the method of capital punishment has been used globally. It was reported that Smith thrashed violently on the gurney and the execution took around 25 minutes. The UN condemned it on Friday as cruel, but Alabama said the process had been carried out humanely. Smith was convicted in 1989 of murdering a preacher's wife, Elizabeth Sennett, in a killing for hire. In his final words, the 58-year-old said his death would mean Alabama had taken humanity a step backwards. The United Nations has condemned the execution of Kenneth Smith, the first person in the United States to be executed using nitrogen asphyxiation. A spokesperson for the UN's Human Rights Commissioner raises the organization's concerns that the untested method may amount to torture, cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment. Those present at Smith's execution have said he began writhing and thrashing after the gas was administered. Meanwhile, Kenneth Smith's wife describes tough final moments of her husband's execution as horror.
Corrections by order of the Alabama Supreme Court at 7:53 Central Time tonight, the state of Alabama started carrying out the execution of Kenneth Eugene Smith by nitrogen hypoxia at the William C. Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore. Smith was executed for the 1988 capital murder of Elizabeth Dorleen Sennett in Colbert County. Please confer with the media witnesses for Smith's last words. Smith was pronounced deceased by physicians at 8:25 p.m. Central Standard Time.
Nothing happened here today is going to bring Mom back. Nothing. It's kind of a bittersweet day. We're not going to be jumping around, hooping and hollering, hooray and all that. That's not us. But we're glad this day is over.
Our son was crying after having just watched his father take his last gasp for air. The media is sitting behind us, shuffling papers and talking about time. My question to you guys is, where's the humanity? Where's the compassion? Where's love and forgiveness?
Heading to Asia now, China on Friday said it had sentenced a British national in 2022 to 5 years in jail for spying. This was made known by Chinese Foreign Ministry in its official confirmation of a case that had gone unreported until this week. Spokesman Wang Weibing said a Beijing court in 2022 sentenced in the first instance the British defendant to 5 years in prison for the crime of illegally obtaining intelligence for overseas actors. After an appeal, he added, the case was upheld in September last year.
23日，2022年8月23日，北京市第二中级人民法院依法对英国籍被告人石一恩为境外收买非法提供情报案一审公开宣判，认定石一恩犯为境外收买非法提供情报罪，判处有期徒刑5年。宣判后，石一恩不服，提出上诉。中方法院严格依法审理案件，充分保障了石一恩的各项诉讼权利，并安排英方探视旁听了案件审判。中国是法治国家，司法机关严格依法推进案件办理工作，保障中外当事人的各项合法权益。
Talking sports, Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp has announced his decision to step down from the role at the end of the season, citing the depletion of energy. Klopp, appointed in October 2015 with a contract until 2026, achieved significant success, winning the Champions League in 2019 and securing Liverpool's first league title in 30 years in 2019-2020 season. The unexpected news comes while Liverpool is competing for 3 trophies, leading the Premier League, progressing to the Europa League knockout phase, and set to face Chelsea in the Carabao Cup final. Additionally, they are in contention for the FA Cup, playing against Norwich City for a spot in the 5th round. Klopp revealed his decision in a recently released club video. And that's all at this hour. Do follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Likon Onobanjo.